Hey, hi, everyone. So, concurrent viewers. Wait a minute. Okay. Oh yeah, we're live. Okay, great.
Can we do like the SNL news desk?
We can do like the SNL news desk. Okay, the streaming's happening. Sorry, it's always so weird. Okay. And then that's going on. Bottle 1, bottle 2. He's got these set up. Okay, people are watching. Okay, hi everyone. That's so weird. This is the first time we're doing it in this format. So if anybody is new to the virtual events at Ray's, I'm Nate Norfolk. I'm the wine spirits director, and this is the first time I've done this live with a guest. This is like, I don't think Katie and I, this is the first time we're drinking with other adults in an enclosed room. You know, we're still like probably just barely 6 feet apart. Okay. And Katie's an advanced sommelier. She works for a distributor here in Wisconsin called Johnson Brothers. That's neither here nor there. Because what's really important is she picked out these wines to do today. And like Pinot Noir is really near and dear to our heart. Katie raised these wines, and she's just an all-around enophile, and you know she's an advanced sommelier, so that's in and of itself is a pretty great accomplishment. But these were her selections, and we kind of talked about these things ad nauseum before we went live. So for some housekeeping, for anybody that's new and it's the first time they're doing a virtual event with us, I have everything for sale on the website, and I put sale prices for each of them, so they're discounted. If you want to buy the wines, they're discounted roughly about 15 to 20% tonight from their normal price. So you can find these on Ray's website. Order them through the website tonight if you like them. There's a finite amount of the first 2 wines available. I ask that you please, if you want them, put a pickup date. When you do your order, put a pickup date for Wednesday the 27th. Yeah, Wednesday the 27th or later, because it allows me to stage all the wines and get everybody's order correct. And if I have to bring any more in, it gives me the right time. It just, for logistics, you put a pickup Wednesday the 27th or later. As we go through these, I'll tell you what's left of them. And I'm going to let Katie take over, but a couple of these, there's not a whole ton of wine available to sell.
Yeah.
So, and then at some point, remind me, because I'm going to plug my other events.
Yes,
yeah.
definitely.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to let Katie kind of get into the whole Pinot Noir thing. I'm going to change the PowerPoint for her. And if everybody sees this down here, I've got a little cursor. So I'll kind of, if I need to point anything, I'll do it. Feel free, if anybody's new, and you haven't done this before, if you're signed in to YouTube and have a YouTube account, you can do the chat function, the written chat. I'll verbally I'll say what the question is, and then Katie and I'll discuss it, and we'll do that as they come in.
Yeah.
Makes sense? And then at the very end of this, we'll do a Q&A, and then I'll say hey, there's 5 minutes left, so we'll shut this down at X time, all right, take it away, boss.
Yeah. So hi, welcome, and thank you for joining us on what turned out to be a very sunny Saturday, so that was wonderful. I'm Katie Espinosa. Nate and I have known each other a really long time, and we just have so much fun doing these, so forgive us while we might nerd out for a few minutes, but hope that you can join in on the fun. Circling back to Nate's comments on inventory, the Luca, the very first wine we're going to taste, which is the most limited amount of inventory, these are the last bottles of this vintage in the country, so that's pretty exciting that you guys are getting to try this.
And there's a question, is the drinking order what is currently displayed on the screen?
Yes. Absolutely.
So the drinking order is what's displayed on the screen, left to right at the bottom, just under, you and I, and got it, See, so we're gonna have we'll do the Luca Pinot Noir from Argentina first. Then we'll do the Louis Latour Marcinay next, and we're going to finish with the Lang Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley, Oregon.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the chat too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when Nate and I were kind of talking about, doing these, we pre-COVID had done quite a few of these kind of together in person up in the tasting room at Ray's and up in the Growler Gallery, and just had so much fun. But this was one of the topics that we actually never did, which was a kind of worldwide comparison of just one grape. So we decided to do Pinot Noir because there's just an infinite number of styles and regions that grow the wine, or that grow the grapes and make the wine. On this kind of opening picture here that you're seeing on the top in the color photos are just different pictures of Pinot Noir, and the one that has on the top left that has the purple and the green berries, that is something that happens during the growing cycle called Veraison. All of the grapes that initially are red start out as white looking grapes, and when they gain color during the growing season, that Veraison is kind of what's happening in that, where some of the berries are still green, some of them are red. They'll all become red, but that's just such a neat and really pretty picture. And then in the middle one, you're going to notice that there's some real dark purple berries, and then there's some that are kind of like a lavender purple color. And Pinot Noir is a family of grapes, with the first word being Pinot. I'm sure you've heard of some of the other ones: Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, or Pinot Grigio, Pinot Meunier, which is traditionally one of the blending grapes in Champagne. And that's kind of what that picture on the bottom right is. So you're going to see all the different colors that this clone of and family of grapes come in. And what's interesting, in some vineyards, you'll notice that there are vines interspersed with each other. So in this particular picture in the middle, you have some Pinot Gris grapes and some Pinot Noir grapes in the same picture. And Pinot Noir is often talked about in the type of clone that is grown, which is what your bottom left picture is. So it's usually determined sometimes by name, sometimes by number. So like clone 23, Pommard clone 777, Dijon clone. And they all just have different attributes that allow them to create the most successful types of wines in different climates and soils and growing regions, and also sometimes just winemaker preference. So that's just kind of our little intro here on what Pinot Noir is.
And we'll do the history of that. We'll go into depth more about the kind of global history of Pinot Noir. That's what the whole idea is.
And don't wait to start drinking.
Please.
And cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Yep. Okay, somebody asked about the Marcinay, and FYI, it is available on the website. If you looked earlier today, it wasn't. That was in case anybody needed to buy a kit leading right up to the class. So now everything's live on the website if you want to buy it. Yep. All right, cool.
All right.
Do you want me to do the next slide?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Yeah.
So Pinot Noir, like I said, it's a obviously a wine grape, and certain grapes have a known lineage or parentage, and so you can pull different attributes in the same way that two parents contribute their DNA to a child. Grapes are really no different when we have the parentage lineage known, but Pinot Noir has thought to have been around for over 2,000 years, and possibly a grape grown by the Romans. And so they're not exactly sure of the parentage, but it is, one of the most famous world-grown grapes. The birthplace of Pinot Noir is really Burgundy, France. Like I said, it was thought to have been grown by the Romans, who also at one point actually occupied different parts of France. But the middle wine, the Louis Latour Marcinay, is from this region of Burgundy. And we'll talk about that wine specifically in a little bit. But we couldn't do a Pinot Noir class without including something from Burgundy, because it really is thought to, like I said, be the birthplace of Pinot Noir. The thing about Pinot Noir that's really unique is that in general, it does very well in moderate to cool climate weather. It does not handle really hot, really dry weather very well for a couple of reasons that we'll talk about in a second. But that really grows from areas as far south as Tasmania, off the southern coast of Australia, all the way up to northern Germany. So any of those kind of cool climate regions in the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere is where you see some of the most famous Pinot Noir grown.
Yeah, and this is why we don't see, this is why Pinot Noir is really globally in limited spaces, and only a handful of regions really excel at it. So I think what was fun is we're doing this kind of like classics and emerging, and classics with the Burgundy. Someplace that's really emerged in the last decade or so in Oregon, and then last 30 years or so in Oregon, and then this kind of really outlying thing with the Lucca Pinot Noir, which is really based on their cool climate because they're extremely high elevation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, in general, we're cool climate here. Cool climate oftentimes has to do with how far away from the equator you are. But it also has to do with proximity to often water influence, oceans, rivers, those kinds of things. Or in the case of Lucca, like Nate just mentioned, really, really, really high elevation. This particular one is over 5,000 feet in elevation. So really high there. So, the air is cooler, and it creates a really great growing season. But Pinot Noir is literally translated as the black Pinot, whereas Pinot Gris is gray and Pinot Blanc is white. But the word Pinot also is a derivative of the French word for pine cone because of the way the clusters are shaped. So in that very first photo,
I'll go back.
That I had up, you'll notice that they're kind of upside down pine cone shapes, and that was just historically some of the earliest written text that refers to this particular grape was in the 1200s. So, they definitely have had understanding and knowledge of this grape in its somewhat traditional current form, with the name attributed to it for going on 1,000 years.
And I think that makes it it's definitely one of the unique wines globally for that reason. It's always been used in Burgundy for 900 plus years. They're making it as a fine wine.
Yes.
Not just a wine like, hey, this is the easiest thing to make booze out of. This is the world's first red wine that people said, we're going to go out of our way to plant it in certain places and experiment with it to see how good we can make it on its own. And it will only work in this area to a meticulous level, which is really interesting.
And especially in Burgundy, it was originally cultivated by the monks in the church that owned all the land at the time, but it wasn't for their own consumption. It was for the nobility in France and all of the upper class, and that's really how they were able to pay for the monasteries and afford to live and work, was to create this. It was not, as Nate said, just kind of basic table wine. It was always celebrated as something special. And so people have just really loved and adapted that. So a couple things about Pinot Noir specifically that make it, great, but also a challenge. So it's very thin-skinned, which means that it has all this delicate, just looking at it, you can see through the wine, it has delicate flavors compared to, say, something like Cabernet, which has much thicker skins, more color. So it makes it, again, more elegant and more delicate, but because of that, it's also susceptible to weather variations a lot more. So if it's too cold or too hot, the grapes can actually get sunburned or they freeze easier. Those thin skins just don't protect the pulp as well. Again, it's also prone to mutation, which is how things like Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc and Meunier kind of all came around. There's also a bunch of regional names that you'll find. So in Italy, they often call it Pinot Nero. In Germany, it's often called Spätburgunder or Blauburgunder. You do sometimes hear that word in the western parts of Austria. In other parts of Austria, they call it Klevner, not to be confused with Klevener, but Klevner. And also known, you talk to a winemaker, and it's sometimes their greatest triumph or their greatest, I don't know about failure, but certainly greatest heartache. So it can be difficult, but it can be hedonistic, and you do often hear of winemakers talk about really chasing the dragon, this unicorn, this, they might a winemaker might have 40 chances in his or her entire life to do their life's work, whereas we might get up and go to work every day. They have maybe 30 or 40 chances, meaning a vintage, so a year's cycle. And Pinot Noir again can be the biggest high or the lowest low. You often hear winemakers talk about that. And
I think because of the nature of where it is, and because it's a cool climate variety, it just will, even great producers, you'll find a lot of variation between one year to the next. Mm-hmm. And I think we, especially in North America and specifically the American wine industry, as people that are most of us, we're raised on kind of commodity red wines from California that have a very formulaic approach, and you kind of, once you start to enjoy Pinot Noir, you've kind of got to throw that concept out the window, that from one year to the next, you're not going to have the same wine, even from the same producer.
Right.
One thing to note too, if everybody has the ability to kind of like Katie and I did, have everything poured already with you, out in front of you, that's probably the best way to do this, in the sense that, you can kind of, I don't think we'll go back and forth between the wines too much, but I think you can get a lot of, you'll get the most out of it.
Especially for the Lang, because it's so youthful, actually having it open and poured by the time we get to it, I think we'll only benefit.
Yeah, and typically folks will ask a lot about, and nobody's done this quite yet, but let's remember to throw out just basic food pairings for the wines.
For sure.
And somebody inevitably will ask for longevity. And I think that's a kind of cool thing. Yeah. Let me know if you want me to get going.
So the other thing about Pinot Noir, it's an amazing food wine. We'll talk specifically about pairings and things like that, but in general, it's a really great wine to serve across an entire meal. It goes with so many different types of food and styles of food. Also, there's variety of styles and price points, ageability. Collectors, often really seek out some of these extra special wines. So when you look at Pinot Noir on the site, what you're going to notice here is that in general, it's a pale color. It's pretty translucent. So if you have, if you just even tip it on its side and you kind of peer down through the glass, you can see your fingers very clearly, very easily through all of the wines. If we were drinking Syrah or Cabernet, that wouldn't be the case, because again, going back to those thin skins, they don't impart a lot of as much color and pigment particles and molecules, so the wines don't get as opaque. So that's one of the nice things about Pinot Noir, is just this beautiful kind of garnet, ruby red, just bright cherry color.
This is cool because, when, and not to go too deep into Sommland, but a lot of parts about taking any type of sommelier examination is you learn how to blind taste.
Yep.
And one of the things about blind tasting is it's all about deduction. What you figure out what the wine isn't first, and Pinot Noir is it is from color alone. A lot of times you'll know. Pinot Noir is very rarely going to be something that's opaque and super, super dark.
Correct.
So you can, if you're doing a blind tasting and you see a lighter red wine, this obviously becomes one of the things that you can think.
You at least want to consider.
You at least want to consider.
For sure.
Even before you even take a sniff of the stuff. Yeah.
So one of the other things that you can notice in the color, is, and we have a kind of unique array of wines here. The Lucca is a 2014 vintage. Most Pinot Noir on the market today is not 2014. They release their wines when they feel they're ready. So this wine, when you look at it, it's not quite that really vibrant red as maybe the second and the third wine. It's starting to get just the faintest bit of kind of like brick or like a slightly amber color, and that just comes with oxygen and age. So that's a really easy thing to see in a wine that's translucent as well. So that's kind of neat to see. You know, and hallmark smells and tastes of Pinot Noir are really that just bright, tart, fresh red fruit. So raspberry, cranberry, cherry, pomegranate, sometimes things like craisins, or you can sometimes get a little bit of black fruit, like red and black plum, sometimes some blackberries and black raspberries, but in general, the hallmark descriptor of Pinot Noir in general is red. You know, red fruit, red color, just really, really vibrant. And if the wine sees oak, which the first and the third wine do, the middle one does not, but when you do have oak, you often can pick up some of these really beautiful baking spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, vanilla, a little bit of tobacco, sometimes like cola, like soda or cherry cola. I don't mean mean in sweetness, but in that kind of like cola nut. My grandfather was a pipe smoker, and he smoked cherry tobacco.
Oh yeah,
and so just that childhood memory for me really often comes out in Pinot Noir, where it has that cherry tobacco.
Barrel, as soon as it's got a barrel age, it kind of gets the cherry tobacco.
It's like that kind of bitterness of the tobacco, but the sweetness of the cherry, and it's just a real positive memory I have of childhood.
Yeah, and I think it's a wine too that really like folks are usually pretty judicious about how they barrel age it, and are like don't. It's. I mean, there's people that are like, hey, we spend thousands of dollars on new French oak barrels and put Pinot Noir in that, and it's sometimes a very, very good wine. But like Pinot Noir, more so than a lot of other red grapes, when it is barrel aged or has some oak influence, it becomes very obvious in the aromatic qualities of the wine, and that's really where a lot of those like vanilla, cedar, dill, coconutty kind of things happen.
And most producers that are putting, especially high-end Pinot Noir in oak, even if they are using new French oak, it's usually a pretty small amount, partially because new French oak is very, very expensive, but it's also very, for lack of a better word, loud. It imparts a lot very quickly. So often they might use a barrel for the first year, and then the second and the third years, the oak is just less prominent. So they'll balance out the blend with a little bit of new wood and then a little bit of used wood. Pinot Noir also is not traditionally an overly tannic wine. It's usually kind of in the medium scale of tannin, but it does have slightly elevated acid, which is a really great thing for food. Acid is kind of like seasoning. It's like why you would use balsamic vinegars or why you put lemon juice on things. So all that acidity really gets your mouth salivating. It helps cut through fat in food and really helps balance out rich meals.
We have somebody saying, I get some mineral sense / flavors. Is that the age? I think it's kind of a combination of both things. I think like, because I get a ton of red fruit and I get a little tobacco thing on it too. And I think, well, go ahead. You elaborate on. I definitely get like red fruit. I get a subtle tobacco character to it.
There is a faint, like almost iron-like quality in the lucca for me, and the thing about Pinot Noir specifically is it does well in certain types of soils that often are attributed with imparting minerality. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole because there's lots of discussions about does minerality actually exist in wine, but I think we can at least all agree that the perception of minerality does. And a lot of that has to do with, soils being volcanic or limestone.
They have a higher
marine sediment.
Yes, those soils have a higher pH.
Correct.
Which is a lower acid, and this is a little geeky, but then that once again allows the grape to have intrinsically more acidity. So I usually find in more kind of more acid-driven red wines, and we're saying this in absolutely the most positive thing, because like over here in Somland, when we talk about acid, we always mean it in a good way.
It's all good.
It's always good. It's always good. There's
in general, the more the better.
Which I think is hard for a lot of consumers there, and a lot of times we try to espouse that in like a more fun words than acid.
Right.
But like I think a lot of times when we smell I think the acidity in Pinot Noir allows us to. It also helps us to smell kind of the savory character of it. Where when red wines especially have lower acid, the fruit flavors tend to come to the fore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Luca for a second here, if you want to.
Oh yeah. I'll get to this slide.
Yeah. So aside from the wine being delicious, and hopefully you've all tried it by now.
Yeah, please drink some.
Super, just such a cool winery on so many levels. So let's start with who the owner is. The owner is Laura Catena. For those of you that drink a lot of wine, might be really familiar with the Catena family. They are slightly tongue-in-cheek, but kind of like what Robert Mondavi was for the wine industry in California in the 1960s. Her father and grandfather, the Catenas, were for the wine industry in Argentina. But she's young. She's also an ER doctor and a published author, and she's just an incredible woman.
Yeah, she splits her time between San Francisco
and Argentina.
Yeah.
She basically, her father and her grandfather didn't speak a lot of English, and she and her brother, Ernesto, said, we could put Argentina wine on the international wine world. And the father and grandfather, not so much that they weren't particularly interested in that, but it was so outside of their realm of understanding of how to get there that she and her brother are really credited almost single-handedly with helping bring Argentinian wines into the global conversation of fine wine. And Luca is her personal project. Her eldest son's name is Luca, and so this is named after him. So it's truly a family project. And this is one of the only Pinot Noirs in Mendoza, Argentina. Do you want to flip to the map real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So we've got a map of South America here, and you're going to see Argentina and kind of that light sage green color towards the bottom of the map. I put this up here because even sometimes I forget how far south Argentina starts in South America. And the red star kind of circles the greater Mendoza area. So on the left side of the star, on the border between Argentina and Chile, is the Andes Mountains. And so that is why this wine is grown at such high elevation, because it's on the eastern side of the slopes of the Andes. Again, so over 5,000 feet in elevation. This is one of the highest elevation Pinot Noirs grown in the world. It's also why it's one of the only Pinot Noirs in Argentina that's made, because most of the vineyards are a little bit lower where it's warmer, and Pinot Noir just doesn't do as well. So this is just a really unique wine for that. So again, over 5,000 feet. The wine is called G-Lot, and it basically refers to the sub-region in Mendoza called Gualtallary. So a little bit of nerd fact for you there.
Yeah, I think, and it's talking about the Catena family. Like I think, too, what makes we think of Argentina almost exclusively as a place where Malbec is grown.
Yep.
For most consumers out there, and they're really pushing to the forefront that the kind of terroir, for lack of a better term, of the Andes and Mendoza specifically is such that, because of the variety of soils and elevation, that a whole host of grape varieties can be used to make fine wine there.
For sure.
Yeah.
And again, because if you grow the right grapes in the right spots, you can do this. You can have a producer in an area that might be really well known for things like Malbec and Cabernet also make some world-class Pinot Noir, and actually Chardonnay is one of their flagship wines off this same property. So just really, really great. If you want to go back, you'll notice that this particular wine they've only imported about 700 cases of this wine. And the winery only releases this when they feel it's ready. So this is the 2014 vintage. The next vintage I'm going to get is 2018. So that's just the way they do things.
Yeah, and because we had a lot of people buy these kits, I only have about 11 bottles of this wine left at house. So what we have on, what it shows is the amount on our website is all that's left.
Right.
So
I do have a little bit of 2012. If anyone really likes this and is interested, we could always get that in for you. But otherwise, we'll be jumping to 2018 next. So again, just they do this. They make this project so high quality that when it's ready, it goes. And it obviously costs them a lot of money to hold that wine back, but that's how much they believe in it. So about 700 cases imported. For what it's worth to you, James Suckling gave this a good 92 points. This one spends about 12 to 14 months in both new and used French barrels. So Nate and I were talking about barrels there, and that's not uncommon to have a combination of new and used. So you're going to notice a little bit more garnet color here because of the age on it. But again, you get this beautiful like wild strawberries. You get this really gorgeous like leather, tanned leather. For me, I'm getting a little bit of smoke and almost like some dried leaves.
Yeah,
it's very savory. You're getting like some savory, fresh and dried herbs, like a little bit of like sage and oregano, a little bit of thyme, French thyme, like that fresh herb and dried herb. Again, spices, a little bit of leather. I think it's got a nice medium structure, but for a wine that's this delicate, that also has this much age on it, it's still extremely youthful. So if you want to know how Pinot Noir can age, this is a perfect example of a wine with age on it for what's in the market, but it's certainly not old.
By no means. And like lately, I've been doing this thing where I like, in talking to people about wine, if I want to talk about wine in like a really binary way, I think about like a lot of wines can fall into one of two camps. I think of things as like they're either intense or complex, and those things are like, and sometimes those things can be congruent. Like a wine can be intense and complex. To me, this is complex,
very complex,
really complex. Without, and people, somebody said when we say that, it just sounds so subjective, but there's so much going on with this, but no one thing is like, rawr,
right.
You know what I mean? There's not an intensity to this wine. It's complex,
right?
And it's like it's got the herbal character, the fruit character, the acid, the oak. But the oak to me is really like, and you'll find this too as a wine ages, the presence of oak becomes diminished over time, as does the presence of fruit.
Yeah. And
this is to me, it's in a really cool spot. Right, it's in a great spot.
So the wine's kind of cerebral in that, when Nate talks about complexity, part of that is just like, how much can you say about it? And even though like the color of it's not certainly very intense, I probably took my last sip a couple minutes ago, and I can still very much taste it. I can still smell it in my nose. So those are really the kinds of things that define complexity.
Yeah, and then there's the whole concept of like, sometimes you age Pinot Noir and it also can go into like what people call like a dumb phase, and it can shut down for a while. Yeah. But this isn't, I don't see this happening to this wine, and it doesn't. It's in a really cool place.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's really well aged at this point. So it still has absolute aging potential, especially if you like more aged wines. But if you like your wines a little bit more fruit driven and a little bit on the younger side, this is a beautiful example of a few years worth of aging that kind of settled the wine down. It's very harmonious and in balance, without being too old by any means.
Yeah, and you guys will notice too, we're tasting the wines, we're tasting the oldest thing first. And intentionally here too, when you do like a contextual tasting like this, a lot of times our fear is that if I've got something that's got some age on it, and if I let it sit out for too long, it just can like it can get overshadowed by wines that have like a very extremely fruity presence to them.
Yeah, and if you want to know what he's talking about, taste the middle one real quick, and then actually taste the Lang, because it's super youthful, and it's just really, it's kind of toddler-esque.
Yeah, if we want to like just quick really cycle youthful through all these, kind of to try all three of them in a row.
Even just when you smell it, that it has it's just so youthful. So,
Oh, wow.
like I said in the beginning, there's no possible way we could do a class, right?
Oh, wow.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. There's no possible way we could do a class on Pinot Noir without Burgundy. And so actually this whole conversation started with what Burgundy are we going to do and then build around it.
Oh, yeah, we went back and forth like 3 times.
So we picked Marcinay for a variety of reasons. So Burgundy is, I'll
show the Burgundy map.
Yeah,
first.
show the map. So it's a region here, obviously in France. On the left map is kind of all of France. So we just wanted to show you where it was in relation to other countries and the Mediterranean and Paris. And it's on that kind of central eastern side, surrounded by the big blue star. And then in the right map, the right side map is basically that area blown up. So the region of Marcinay is at the far northern region of that Burgundy area. And in general, the northern part of Burgundy is known for Pinot Noir, so we really wanted to pick one of those wines. But the other thing about Burgundy especially is it could be a lifelong study and still not understand all of it. And the wines can range in price absurdly, exponentially, very, very, very quickly. Really, arguably, the most expensive wines in the entire world come from this small pocket of France, and often fetch higher prices than even the most famous Cabernets. So you might not always hear about that, but often these are the absolute most expensive wines produced in the entire world.
Yeah, and there's no, we use the analogy of like Catina kind of like being Mondavi in Argentina. There's no, Burgundy doesn't have somebody that's out there making, 3 million cases of the same wine.
That area from north to south is only about 40 miles. Mm-hmm. It's really small. And so the growing area, and it's kind of in between two, they're bigger than a hill, but they're smaller than a mountain.
Yeah, it's the topography of it is it's like a uplifted, it's like a fault line that got shoved on its side. So, and that's why it's got all these that's kind of like the really cool part about this. And like when people dig deep into Burgundy, they talk about like, oh, there's all these different soils there. It's basically somebody like took a crack in the earth and like pushed it up.
Yeah, like propped it up on its side
and
at
then
an angle.
And like so like all the soils from these just millions of years of geological epochs become exposed over a very a topography of sometimes even a few hundred meters.
Yeah. So if you're looking at that map, on the left side of the map is high elevation, and then on the right side of the map it kind of goes down a slope. So it looks very flat there, but it's really not. The other reason we picked Marcinay quite transparently is a price point thing. So Marcinay is still something that's spectacular. It gives you a beautiful example of what Burgundy can be without a really ridiculous price tag. So one of the most famous vineyards that grows Pinot Noir is the one right to the south of Marcinay called Gevrey-Chambertin. And
I spilled wine on myself already. Sorry.
That means it's good.
Yeah.
So while Marcinay can be something you can drink, fairly often, entry-level Gevrey-Chambertin can very easily start at $80 or $100 a bottle. So, Marcinay is just also a really great, it's certainly not an inexpensive wine, but by Burgundy standards, it's certainly a really great value, and it gives you all the hallmarks. While maybe not every bit of nuance and complexity, it gives you all the hallmarks of what makes Burgundy potential so great. So, this is the Marcine Rouge, and I put down Rouge because that region can also produce Marcinay Blanc, which would be Chardonnay. Louis Latour is actually one of the oldest operators in Burgundy, and they are still family owned. So they are 11th generation. The winery has been around since the late 1700s. It came out of existence with some of the first acquisitions of vineyards after the French Revolution, and the vineyards were acquired from the aristocracy and from the church. So, 11th generation, still family owned, which is really, really neat. We just showed you the map of Marcinay being the northernmost village in the Côte d'Or, which means the Gold Coast. The name does not go without notice, just for how beautiful and for how just the value of the land really is this Gold Coast. And it marks the beginning of something in the area called the Route de Grand Cru, where the top vineyards are located, and it's kind of along this one road that really starts just south of Marcinay.
Yeah, and interestingly, like some of the value of Marcinay wines, and I'm just going to shoot out here because I can't remember it, but Marcinay you couldn't make red wine there and call it under the village name until about 30 years ago.
Yeah, maybe? I would say like in the 80s.
Yeah, it's like the late 80s is when they decided to you could do, it used to be a rosé AOC before it was a red wine AOC. And finally folks said like, here's the expletives, like, oh God, holy shit, like red wines from Burgundy cost a ton of money. What are we doing with this place that's really
in this
has the
area
potential to make really good red wine. So this is like, this is I'm sorry, I'm reiterating you, and but nonetheless it's like this great introduction to red Burgundy. And here I love this because it's like Pinot Noir from Burgundy, but from a village, and it's like naked.
Yeah.
It's complete. There's no wood to this wine.
This is all stainless steel. So I did, aside from we needed to have a Burgundy because we can't have a discussion on Pinot Noir without it, I did think it would be cool to show you that a wine can still be beautiful and complex without oak. And because the wine is a little more delicate, they actively choose not to use oak. So that the grape and the vibrancy of the fruit is front and center in this wine. So these wines are all hand harvested. It does rest for about a year in tank, whereas the Luca rested for about a year in mixed use barrel. But just really neat. So this wine is also going to have some of that minerality, while slightly different from the Luca. The Luca is grown obviously in the Andes and partially volcanic soil, partially like clay. But what we have here in Marcinay, a little bit of clay, but we have a lot of limestone. And again, that just gives a really beautiful, minerality to the wine. We've got, because this wine is not masked or covered up with any sort of oak notes, we have all this just really vibrant, crunchy, almost intense red fruit. So for me, this is all that like cranberry and pomegranate. You want to talk about a beautiful Thanksgiving wine? This is your winner right here. So it's got all of that, but it's really silky. It's got just a beautiful balance between the acid and the tannins. It's a really bright finish. The wine, my mouth is salivating. It's really bright. I'd love to have some cheese right now. We didn't talk about food with the Luca, but classic pairings with Pinot Noir are duck and salmon and like mushroom risotto, coq au vin in the area, rabbit, kind of things that are slightly rich without being overly so. Again, salmon is a really common pairing, so don't be afraid if you have other, kind of higher fatty fishes.
Fish. Yeah, salmon, swordfish.
Is another good one. Mackerel, and that's a real common pairing, especially in the Willamette Valley because they're so close to the Pacific Ocean. So we can talk about that in a second. But, brie and other like triple cream and like heavy fat cheeses.
And like game birds.
Yeah.
Game birds are really great. Like the Luca, like if somebody, sorry, I'll dominate this and go back. This would be a tough in a blind tasting to me. The Luca, the Argentina wine, because it's really got all the hallmarks of being an old world wine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's interesting, like when we do the Centenate, because I love all the, like, you're right, like there's like the whole, especially like the pomegranate, I get the little rhubarb thing.
Oh, sure.
Too,
yeah.
which really excites me. Like, but the pomegranate rhubarb,
yeah,
like classic, like really zesty, crunchy red fruit things are so,
real tart,
Yeah.
Like you can have a really fruity wine that is still quite tart and not sweet. And like this wine is all fruit without having a scotch of sweetness to it. It's again, like rhubarb is not sweet.
Yeah.
Pomegranates really are quite tart. Cranberry, same thing. So, this is really great. Again, for those of you that are into scores, our friend James Suckling gave this little friend here 91 points. Again, just some of the most expensive wines in the world really come from this region, and it's really the holy grail for wine geeks. Nate and I have probably spent the better parts of our career studying Burgundy, and every year there's a whole new set of things to learn. There really is.
Yeah, 100%, and
But it can give you the greatest high and also some of the greatest heartbreak as well.
It can easily drain you of a lot of your expendable income.
Yes. But when you have that wine and you say, "Wow, I get it."
Yeah.
It's not like anything else. I mean, it can change your perception of wine forever.
Totally. And I think what's really fun is because this is an entry-level Burgundy wine, and I bring up the game bird thing too, because I think of having really simple. What I love about Burgundy is it's one of the best wines for simple foods.
Mm-hmm.
I mean seriously, and even though we think about Italian, sometimes these wines are just at home with pastas
mm-hmm.
and tomato sauce dishes,
yep.
or things that have balsamic
Have,
vinegar,
mushroom risotto.
Yeah, mushroom risotto, stuff like that. That gorgeous, really pure, super focused, hyper focused, clean fruit and savory character is inimitable. It's the sign of this is why the rest of the world makes Pinot Noir.
For sure, and Burgundy, actually a lot like Tuscany, and I don't mean today, but back in 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, it was very peasant.
Sure.
So the food in general, true, authentic, rustic Tuscan cuisine, true cuisine of Burgundy that's where escargot comes from, because there's snails in the vineyard. Really,
totally,
it's very peasant, simple food,
mm-hmm.
And I don't say that in any sort of demeaning way. I say that as really a compliment to show that you don't need haute cuisine to go well with these wines.
Sure, yeah, that's a really good point. I think a lot of times we think there's a tendency in the U.S. to associate French food with haute cuisine, but Jesus, the concept of a bistro is
super simple.
Simple foods.
Other really basic ingredients mm-hmm. to pair with Pinot Noir are mustard things. Actually, if you flip on the map real quick and show them where Dijon is.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, hence this is kind of it, and we don't think about Christ.
So
sorry.
So the region.
I got 4 screens going here. So
there you go.
Yeah, when we talk about literally the Dijon, Burgundy's sandwiched in between Dijon and Lyon, and Lyon is the culinary, whatever anybody wants to say about Paris, whatever. Lyon is the culinary capital of France.
Yeah, for sure.
You
know.
Yep.
That's where Escoffier was from. And Paul Bocuse had his restaurant there. But if you look at the very top of the right side map is the city of Dijon. And that as in Dijon mustard. Mm-hmm. So, it's really, you often hear people, chefs and whatever, what grows together goes together. And anything that has braised chicken thighs with a Dijon sauce, or pork, rolled pork with, again, Dijon, all of those, any of those kind of herbal mustardy things are also just really good basic ingredients for Pinot Noir pairings.
Rebecca says the minerality is very different with this one, almost salt-like qualities to it. This wine to me is youthful. Mm-hmm. Still, this is a 2017 vintage, and it's interesting because a lot of times I think of Burgundy wines and I immediately go to oh man, they should be really savory and have earthy flavors. Man, this is because it is that unoaked thing that's going on here, and it's got that really crunchy red fruit to me. I get subtly stony qualities out of it, but it's to me it's all about this gorgeous fruit. You're right, and it doesn't have the same the Luca is has more kind of secondary characteristics happening.
Yeah, and
it's showing a little more age.
part of that's oak and part of that's
Yeah.
age. And honestly, part of that is while they might be similarly priced, Luca is made like a much more expensive wine.
That's a really good point.
But it doesn't come from a region that would arguably fetch the price it's worth. So it's really an otherwise bargain. If that wine were made exactly the way it is in Gevrey-Chambertin, just south of Marcinay here, it would not be, a $30 or $40 bottle.
It'd be $100.
It'd be $100 bottle. So some of that's just like basic economics of supply and demand. But going back to Rebecca's comment about saltiness, I would agree with you. Part of that, again, like Nate said, is that the wine isn't masked or softened by any sort of oak, so everything is kind of naked and fresh. But the other thing that we talked about in the very beginning, or that I mentioned, was that acidity acts like salt. I mean, you often hear chefs talk about seasoning with acid.
Because it makes your mouth water.
It makes your mouth water.
Yeah.
So
and it dries you out.
Again, it's why people who are on a low sodium diet, but season with lemon juice and season with balsamic vinegars and things like that, because all of that acid gives your mouth the perception of seasoning without it actually being salt. So
my hypertensive old guy self should really just be drinking more wine.
Totally.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely will help with the blood pressure.
Yeah.
Good call on that though, Rebecca.
Yeah,
good
super
notice.
cool.
Yeah.
All
right.
Yeah, this is like it's interesting. Like this is classic Burgundy, but young Burgundy at the same time. And like to talk about this, like this is. I would say this is a wine to like it. You would intermediately age this.
Yeah.
This isn't gonna like 3 or 5 years is where this wine needs to be.
Yeah.
Like you could hold on to it for longer than that, but it'll lose that really gorgeous bright red fruit. And you're not going to get, it'll just become a softer, gentler, subtler wine.
Right.
It's not going to become, like the Luca's got a lot going on with some age on it. This isn't going to turn into that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's not going to get significantly better with a lot of age on it. I would agree with that.
It's a meant for early consumption with all those fun kind of food things right out the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Am I going too fast?
No, you're great.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So, the other, when we talked about wanting wine from around the world, obviously we needed to pick something from the United States because, world-class Pinot Noir has grown here too. And obviously the conversation immediately went, well, do we do California or do we do Oregon? And we chose to do Oregon for a variety of reasons. But at the end of the day, because we just love it and this wine's delicious.
And this wine is crazy delicious. So most of you at home probably will have 2019 or 2000. That's exactly what I'm trying to address,
Yeah.
and I screwed it up because somebody's trying to call me and I had my phone off. But sorry. So at home, you probably have 2018 Lang Willamette Valley Pinot Noir. What you will buy if you buy any will be 2019. These are really similar vintages.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I know this is a little bit of conjecture and it's subjective, but 19 is really good, guys.
Really good.
Like
18
really
was
good.
really good.
18 and 19's really good too.
Yeah, they had two beautiful back-to-back vintages. So we picked Lang because they're not a huge winery. They're not a huge wine represented in our market. So we thought many of you maybe wouldn't have heard of it or had it. And if you have, even more kudos to you. But like our friends at Ray's here, all three of these wines are family owned. Latour by far being the biggest winery of all of them, but still family owned. And Lang is no different. So second generation, Jesse Lang is the owner and winemaker. His parents started it in the 1980s when there were only like 10 wineries.
Yeah,
in the
I mean, they're in
Valley.
the first
huge,
dozen wineries
first wave.
in Willamette Valley, which is crazy because there's hundreds now. Hundreds now.
So one of the cool things about Burgundy is about Oregon Pinot Noirs, people always say, that it's like Burgundy. And it is in some ways. If you look at a map, they're on very similar latitudes. Actually, the latitude of Lang and Burgundy runs through, right about Green Bay, actually.
Yeah, it's like 46 degrees north, probably.
But what makes these areas so different, if you go to the go the other direction,
I'm blowing through these.
Go to the Willamette map, yeah.
Burp.
So on the left is all of Oregon, and the teal color is the Willamette Valley proper. On the on the right map, if you look at that kind of northwest area, that's like a darker teal. Those are the kind of sub areas of the Willamette, and if you can read the map, the Dundee Hills is actually where Lang is located. But what makes the winery so different, you saw where Burgundy was, and it was on the eastern part of France, very landlocked. And in the beginning, one of the things I talked about was proximity to water. And so this is just on the inside of the coastal mountain range and very close to the Pacific Ocean, which is very, very, very cold. And so it always has this moderating influence. It's technically a maritime climate in the Willamette Valley, whereas in Burgundy, it's a continental climate like we have here in Wisconsin. So they don't have quite the weather swings that we have, but, they'll get dustings of snow, and they'll have, they'll also have rain throughout the growing season, and most of the West Coast is really dry during the growing season, and they get all their rain in the winter. So that allows for just beautiful, slow ripening, really great, avenues of sunshine. The other thing that makes Burgundy really inconsistent in general is the region has massive hail problems. They get hail, and sometimes it wipes out almost entire vintages. That doesn't happen really in the Willamette.
Yeah.
So they also just have...
Argentina gets hail too.
Argentina?
Weird.
Yeah, their other problem are birds. That's why they have all the nets. But, so one of the things that allows, though, in the Willamette Valley by comparison to Burgundy is a more consistent growing season, more consistent ripening, and therefore more consistent vintages. So those are all positives for the Willamette Valley. It also, in general, gets a little bit warmer. And because of the latitude and the elevation by comparison to Burgundy, they have a little bit more degree days of sunshine because of the way the earth tilts in the middle of the summer all the way in Oregon by comparison to so far east in Burgundy. The way it tips, the sun doesn't go down until like after 10 o'clock at night out in Oregon in the summer, whereas in Burgundy that's not the case, even though they're on similar latitudes, because a latitude is a 360 degrees, it's not just north-south. So again, all kinds of just some nerdy facts for you, but all of those things can really make a difference. But some of the biggest ones really is the closeness to the ocean, for affecting weather.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this smells so good.
It does. To me, it has a subtle blue fruit.
Yeah.
It's more like a blueberry. I get a blueberry thing.
Super.
I know some of you guys have 18 and we have 19. But
18 was gorgeous too. 18 is actually probably, honestly, drinking just slightly better right now because it has had just another year in bottle. This is very youthful, but obviously has lots of potential. This is also really floral, like lots of violets and like purple flowers for me.
Yeah, I totally
lavender.
I totally get like I'm getting like a lavender, violet, blueberry.
It's almost like in like some sage and like scrub brush. I mean, it almost has that like kind of Provence like.
Yeah, like a herbs de Provence, like the Garrigue lavender kind of. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the
wine's super savory.
Some folks that have the 18 are like, I have cinnamon on the nose and vanilla flavors, and like I get a little bit of some oak on the nose with this.
The oak's not very pronounced on this yet. I think as the fruit settles a little bit, I think the oak will show up. But the wine does have about 15% new French oak. The Lucca, by comparison, had about 25% new French oak, meaning the balance is used oak, so second-year oak or third-year oak, but both the Lang and the Lucca have been aged about a year.
Somebody back a little bit was like, I think we can tie these two together. Like, it's Bob Mangan. He's like, what percentage of Burgundy are unoaked as compared to oaked? Well, I mean, like, first, I want to touch on one thing with Burgundy. It's like, even though the color is like, we think of like Burgundy, the color of Burgundy is named after Burgundy wine. Burgundy's really, it's almost 2/3 white wine. Mm-hmm. You know, when we take the whole, it's more of a white wine region than it is a red wine region.
Mm-hmm.
And like the concept of oak and wine is like I think a lot of times when we sell wine or we drink wine, you know, when we sell wine or drink wine as just, a lot of times we use the concept of oak in a very binary way. Like it's either oaked or it's unoaked. Like, holy shit, this exists on this insane spectrum. Like an insane spectrum, like the type of oak you use, the size of the barrel, how many times you've aged it. So Bob, it's like, it's like if you ask an Indian woman, like, what percentage of turmeric she puts in her curry versus, like, everybody's gonna have a different answer.
In general, oak is especially in Burgundy often very related to price.
Yes.
So
that's a really good point.
You know, when you find a Burgundy that might be $30 and under, there's a good chance.
Zero.
Yeah, it has little to no oak.
Yeah, little to no oak. Yeah.
Partially because they want the wine to be approached youthfully.
And they want less expensive wines to be able
as an option, right?
To be able to be consumed right away.
But unless you're in the region of Chablis, which is in Burgundy technically, but outside of the region that we showed you,
mm-hmm.
but stylistically often is more focused on unoaked Chardonnay. But in general, when you start getting wines that are $50 a bottle and up, for the most part, they've seen some sort of oak.
Yeah, in Burgundy.
As a very broad comment, I can't think of any wine in Burgundy at any price point, even including like DRC, that is using 100%
new oak. Yeah, like nobody does it. It's just
correct.
Yeah,
it would ruin the wine.
Yeah, it would wreck the wine. Yeah, I mean, like that's the whole thing. Like with Burgundy, like nobody's doing like all new oak.
I can't even think of like, because like we have Grand Cru Louis Latour.
Yeah,
and even that is on the high end, like
50%.
I was gonna say like 30.
Yeah. I can't think it because the whole idea. It's like
the Corton Charlemagne and the Grand Cru Cortons are like 30% new.
It's like putting too much salt in a dish.
Yeah.
You can't go back.
Right.
You know what I mean? You got to think of the oak like spice, and like kind of the cooler climate you are, and the more subtle the wine you have, the less likely you are to oak the living shit out of it.
For sure.
Yeah. And that's why you rarely see Pinot Noir being like, it's 100% new oak.
Right.
I mean, there's examples of it, and like my friend here and I it's very difficult for us not to say pejorative things about those type of wines.
They're not our favorite.
Those type of Pinot Noirs especially. Yeah. So
they also probably aren't all Pinot Noir.
Yeah. So that's a whole
That's a different conversation.
Yeah. Like sometimes in some places, like in California, you can blend. This is kind of the beauty of Oregon, which is an interesting thing. Like in California, if you have Pinot Noir or any other grape variety, on the label, if it says whatever XYZ thing it is, if it's Merlot or Cabernet or Zinfandel, it only has to be 75% of that grape variety. In Oregon, you have to be 95. Yeah, 95. For Pinot has to be 95% Pinot Noir. Like, so sometimes in California, you can get Pinot Noir, and the classic thing people accuse California wineries to do it is they're saying it's Pinot Noir, and it's probably like 20% Syrah. That's like the classic one.
So when you get a wine labeled Pinot Noir, and it's really purple, and you can't see through it,
mail me!
It probably has other things in it.
Yeah.
This, however, is 100%.
It's all Pinot Noir.
It's 100% Pinot Noir, and most of the anyone who's doing this in a really prestigious way, that's what they're doing. Because they want to. Even if they're not trying to specifically emulate Burgundy, they're trying to make the best Pinot Noir they can within the region. So, do you want to go up one slide back to the line? So I just want to talk about the label really quick. So it's got this like lure on it, and in the region of the Willamette Valley, there is a variety of different sustainability initiatives. And one of them is
Salmon Safe.
called Salmon Safe, and basically it is a it was really started by a variety of different wineries, and it was really a promise to treat the ground and everything they put in it responsibly, because all of the water that runs off into the watershed ends up in where the salmon hatcheries are, and that feeds the better part of the salmon offerings for some of the world, and certainly at least for the United States. So that lure is just a testament to biodiversity and biodynamics. And while they may practice organic type farming, a lot of wineries don't specifically label those things just because of the requirements, but that lure is really just a testament to kind of the promise of protecting the earth. And also, if you ever are lucky enough to get out to the Willamette Valley, and you end up, obviously without COVID, but with if you get to a winery where they do these salmon bakes,
it's
like
the
thing that happens. So they roast these
just
basically
incredibly excited
salmon.
to be like, here, have salmon with our Pinot Noir.
Right. Here, have a piece of salmon as big as your torso. Yeah.
It's the thing.
So yes, it's the thing. And so that's another one of those dishes that is really classic, especially with Oregon Pinot, again, because of what grows together goes together. So, Pinot Noir is really the flagship grape in the Willamette Valley. The second most planted grape is Pinot Gris. And interestingly, the third most planted grape in the region is Chardonnay. So again, we're 2/3 white wine to 1/3 red wine, but Willamette is Pinot Noir in the Willamette is really kind of where the gum shit is. Where the wineries, what they're really going for.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, 100%. Man, this is the second vintage of this. I mean, I'm like shocked because like when we tasted the 18 probably like 6 months ago and brought it in the store, it's like, wow, this wine is banging. It's so good for like.
Yeah.
It's so good for just their basic level wine. It's really, really solid.
So they only made 3,100 cases for the entire United States. So Lang is not sold in every state in Wisconsin or in the country. And they had been in Wisconsin years ago and then kind of fell out. Quick little backstory that every state that a winery wants to sell in, they have to register individually, and it's very, very, very expensive. So when you're talking about only having 3,000 cases to sell, and the bulk of that needs to supply restaurants and the winery itself in your home area of Oregon, you just don't really have the quantity of wine or the financial capabilities to sell in every state. But they decided to come on back, and we're super excited they did, because they just have a stunning lineup. Again, family owned. They're just great people. They make beautiful wine.
Really good Pinot Gris, too.
We have the regular.
Really
so this is
Pinot
the
Gris.
Classique. So this is their Willamette Valley kind of blend of grapes from that Willamette Valley region. And then we have the Classique Pinot Gris as well. And then we have a Reserve Pinot Noir, and then their flagship single vineyard Pinot Noir called Freedom Hill, which is one of the most famous single vineyards in all of the Willamette. So just a really, really great lineup of wine.
Wow. Super, super delicious. Wow.
Shout out some of your favorites. Would love to hear about them.
Yeah, people are, I'm getting good feedback.
Good.
Chris, thank you. We've loved all three for different reasons. This one is delicious. It really is.
It is really delicious.
Good. Yeah. And I interestingly, like, and maybe it's I'm becoming more of a grown up, but the last 5 or 6 years, I've really felt like Oregon wines are starting to have a little bit more stylistic focus, and there's been a string of really good vintages too, and that absolutely helps. And I think that like Pinot Noir is somewhat coming to maturity there in both the physical sense and in the sense as physical in this vineyard, and like there's just enough experienced people dealing with it that there's really, really high quality wines.
Yep.
Where like even 15 years ago you'd be like, not every vintage is good.
Well,
Some people are.
And
yeah,
without,
you can talk shit. It's cool.
well, I was gonna say, without making this like any sort of political statement, at the end of the day,
That's
it's
okay.
warmer there than it was 15 years ago. And in this region specifically, right now, they are in a very good swing of that, because before they could have a string of
really cold,
really wet, rainy, cold vintages.
Yep.
They used to say that, it would be cold, like winter jacket, cold and rainy until the 4th of July. And if the switch didn't flip, there wasn't a crop. Whereas now, in the last, 15, 20 years, they are definitely on the upswing of much more consistent, warmer, drier weather. At the rate it's going, at some point that would become a problem. But for them, they were almost on the edge of it being too cold for a lot of years to make really consistently good wine.
Yeah. There were a couple dud.
In a warm vintage, the wine was always great, but it was inconsistent. And now you're seeing, between just winemaking styles improving, and people working together to understand, what does well where, but also just a more consistent weather pattern has really benefited the area as well.
Super. Oh, I gotta make one. Darsha, you need to buy the wine for the Shiraz class, okay? Come on. We can do this.
Talk about your next class.
No. That was I made sure I'd do an inside joke for somebody here. Hold on, there was actually a really good question here, and I didn't mean that that all the questions weren't good. Don't do the which is your favorite wine of the night. Come on. Wait, so envious, reverse Pink Floyd. Wish we were there. Oh, fun. Okay, yeah. Me too, man. Oh my god. This is the best, but they're all great. Greed over here, Lang is okay. Yeah. Here. Okay. Rob. Katie, you got to answer what it means to be an advanced sommelier.
Oh, come on. It's.
So she's gonna be super. She's gonna be like.
You take a test.
She's gonna be really humble. Katie's the only one in the great state of Wisconsin, but there's that.
So have a fancy pin. I'm sure you're all real jealous.
And you had to study your ass off.
Oh,
it's
I did.
like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I joke around with my wife. It's like, if you want to float me for a year when I have to work,
no kidding.
I'll go take the test.
My husband was amazing. He did all the cooking and the cleaning and
oh my gosh.
He definitely stepped up to the plate. But so the Court of Master Sommeliers is really an international organization that is kind of an industry organization. It's not like a college per se, but they have a set of industry standards in order to be able to call yourself a sommelier insofar as what they recognize. And there's a few different tiers. The top one is Master Sommelier. So if you've ever seen the movie Somm, currently on Netflix, it chronicles the journey of like four guys, probably about 10 years ago now, but it chronicles the journey of four guys. In the movie, they're at the level I'm at now. So if you happen to watch the movie, you kind of know what I went through to get to that, and then kind of what the next steps are. But it chronicles their journey from going from being an advanced sommelier to the top tier, which is a master sommelier. There's only about 250 of those in the world. So definitely a very small company. There's only about 30 women, 35 women maybe of that. So even smaller, but advanced sommelier is the step before that. So you basically study your ass off for a long time and spend a whole lot of money and studying wine and buying wine and tasting wine and making note cards, and my dining room was full of maps, and it was so there's a written test, there's a blind tasting part of the exam where you have to blind taste 6 wines in 25 minutes, and then there's a service portion where you have to do like a mock dinner service where there's master sommeliers sitting at a table and you have to kind of pretend like you're waiting on them while they knock their drinks over and ask you questions and tell you whatever you suggest they don't want, and it's just part of the process. So anyway.
Yeah, and you gotta.
And then you get a pin.
You get a pin. Yeah, and then you know like that you're being super humble, because it's like this is such a vast subject matter, and like you've got to memorize we talk about Burgundy and there's like 31 Grand Crus. You don't have to know that. You have to know in all of those villages that we showed you on the map, you have to know every single one of like the premier, the most important premier crews, and then you've got to keep up on all the like globally what are all the new wine regions that are legally identified, and you have to know all those like as they happen and as they're happening, because that's the stuff they're going to quiz you on. It's not just like the classic stuff; it's also what the most relevant.
It's not like going to college where you get like a syllabus and then at the end of the semester your test is on what you've covered.
It's a total independent study.
Yeah. And so for example, the written test, I can't remember how many questions it was, like 60, 75, maybe even 100. Let's just say, but like when you're asking questions on grapes and regions and winemaking and oak usage, and there were a couple beer and sake questions, like, you know, you study all this stuff to maybe have of the entire region of Burgundy, which literally could be a lifelong study. I think there was one question.
Oh yeah, because they're
gonna, and there was like one question on Greece. And like,
they know that you crammed. Like, here, watch this. So I'll do something like that you guys will all think is obscure and like is commonplace, relatively commonplace for me. But then I'll ask Katie to pontificate on it. What's petuniosh mean in Hungary?
Petuniosh is actually the basket that they use to harvest the grapes that end up making this really crazy dessert wine. And the more petuniosh that are filled that go into a vat to make the wine, the sweeter it is. And
this is like we did in stages. This is off the top of our head. You know, seriously, it's like that. It's that stuff. So then, like, okay, like, whereas, like, we both talked about this. So then in Burgundy, where can you make there's one outlier appellation where you can make Sauvignon Blanc. This is an easy one for both of us. Yeah. I mean, like, she knows you got to know all this stuff. So, how would you compare, here, these are good questions. We're getting off topic. I'm being cheeky. And now I have drank wine and I feel great. The best I have in days.
You're falling behind.
I'm falling behind here. Oh wow! Oh, Katie's drank more than I have, and she's like totally loose in here. Do you have a lot of laying available? Yeah, we have a ton of laying available. That's the thing we got a ton of actually. Like so many organisms, which are the greatest wine grapes? Which are the greatest wine grape climate refugees? Oh shit, that's a hard question.
I'm not sure I follow.
What is going to, which wine regions are going to have the greatest negative effect from global warming? Is the idea, or climate change?
So I think loosely, it's the areas that were already kind of warm.
Hot. Places that are hot. Like I definitely think like the Central Valley of California is gonna have a hard time.
Even Napa is struggling in some vintages, especially for things like Chardonnay, or Sauvignon Blanc, which in general is things that they make a lot of. And
oh god, that's a really good point.
And actually even in some of the more inland regions of Sonoma, not that they're exclusive to this, but just because it's probably the areas we're all most familiar with. Just from a map standpoint. But some of the inland areas, Alexander Valley and Dry Creek and, some of those are definitely, what you're also seeing is, so not to like super nerd out and get off topic here, but there's also regions where, for example, in Italy, in the region of Piedmont, in the famous region of Barolo, in order for a wine to be labeled Barolo, a bunch of things need to happen. So there's aging requirements. It can only be made from Nebbiolo.
It's got to be on a slope.
That is southeast facing. So if you are planting Nebbiolo
on the north side, I know where you're getting at.
You can't call it Barolo.
Yeah.
You can call it Langhe Nebbiolo, or you can do other things with it, but you can't call it Barolo. And there are actually some pioneering winemakers that are testing out the thought that as those regions also get warmer, and Nebbiolo is actually a lot like Pinot Noir. If you looked at them here, they would look similar. It's thin-skinned. And
it's very site-specific.
Right, and so if it's a really hot vintage, those grapes don't do well. They raisinate, they get sunburnt, they get holes, and then that's where they start to rot and whatever. So there are some pioneering producers that are testing out other sides of these hills that historically had never been allowed to plant Nebbiolo and call it Barolo, to kind of see, like, could that be an option for them if things continue down the path they're going.
Yeah, so the idea here is that they would even plant these, like, it's kind of an insurance policy.
Yeah. So right now they legally can't harvest those grapes and put them into their Barolo wines, but that doesn't mean they can't harvest those grapes and make them like Barolo and treat them like Barolo and just kind of see what happens.
The person with the YouTube name Necral1, I don't know who you are, but you know, you're asking us, how would you compare or relate New Zealand Pinot Noir to the wines we have tasted today?
It's a great question.
It's a really great question. And then I think, you know, like, and I don't want to talk for Katie, but I think there's a tendency, like, we'll take any one country and no matter how big it is, we'll be like, let's just mash it into like a homogenous idea. But like New Zealand definitely has like a coastal and North Island vibe for Pinot Noir. And then there's an area called Central Otago. And Central Otago is what we would say is going to be the most like Burgundy. And it like really is like Burgundy. And it's almost priced like Burgundy. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the wines are kind of like not so awesome.
So it's a little bit, so climactically, it's probably closer to Oregon just because New Zealand is narrow. But Central Otago is very mountainous, but it still has a lot of, so it has this weird like juxtaposition between continental and maritime climate because there is a lot of ocean influence coming off the Indian Ocean, but then it also has like really a lot more elevation than you would even see off the coastal range in the Willamette, and certainly whatever elevation in Burgundy, which is by comparison to say even Oregon or Argentina, it's pretty minimal.
Yeah, she's saying fair enough. Limit the question to the South Island.
South Island. So Central Otago would definitely be your go-to area. There is some decently priced, actually Pinot Noir coming out of Marlborough. Which most often is where the Sauvignon Blanc, the most well-known Sauvignon Blancs come from. But there's producers that are making really good, solid, and often affordable Pinot Noir out of that region.
Agreed.
The best Pinot Noir ageability, and probably the most famous, Mount Difficulty and some of those other really great producers are all coming out of Central Otago.
Yeah.
It is definitely one of those things, though, that follow producers more so than the region. Because producers that are going to make good wine down there are going to be worth the money.
Yeah, and I would say it's definitely a place like New Zealand Pinot Noir is something you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
It's not a place to go for value. And one of the reasons
well, just the cost of getting it here.
Yeah. And one of the reasons you see Katie's also a brand manager in her job, and I do the category management for the store. And think I'm the guy who thinks like globally, and I have carte blanche. I can bring whatever the hell I want to bring in here. And one of the reasons you don't see a lot of New Zealand Pinot Noir here is at the kind of commodity level in like the $15 to $25 level. Most of it's not very good, and then the Central Otago stuff is more in like the $40 to $100
for sure
price point,
and you've got to have people. I mean, really, at the end of the day,
there's not a market for it.
Right. You've got to have people that are willing to drop that kind of money on New Zealand Pinot Noir, and often people who will buy Burgundy or they buy, single vineyard Oregon
wine or California. And it's almost in a not fair way, like people like Katie and I really have to focus on like Oregon, California, Burgundy, for Pinot Noir, and it just that just gets lost in the punch, man. Right. You know what I mean? It's just like how hard do we want to roll the boulder up the hill?
Yeah, how hard do you want to work to sell that bottle? Is really what it comes
especially when a lot of times it's a very Burgundian kind of thing, and I much more am like, hey, in order for me to keep selling Burgundy, I have to sell Burgundy.
Yeah.
And the same thing with her, like we literally have these conversations like, okay, I've got to, we're both in this unique position where we get to decide what the companies we work for are going to sell, but also at the end we have to present it to an end consumer and they have to drink the stuff.
Right.
You know, so we have to justify it in some way, and we're like, I'm like 10 times more likely to focus on $70 Burgundy than I am $70 New Zealand Pinot Noir.
There's just better context.
It's just better
for
context.
consumers too.
Totally.
Yeah. It's a good question though.
Hey, why don't I do this? Because like I'll, for the sake of everyone, well, just for sake, I'll be honest, for the sake of Katie and I getting the hell out of here. Like we'll take. I'm gonna shut this down in like 5 minutes. So like, if you have any other questions, we'll wrap it up by 6:30.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Oh yeah. Which regions have the best value for best value Pinot Noirs? Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah. So in general, not to skirt your question.
Yeah.
But in general, for all the reasons we talked about, thin skin, easy mutation, weather variation, Pinot Noir is probably one of the last places you want to go for value wine.
Oh shit.
But with that being said, just from a logistical standpoint, domestic wines certainly have less add-on costs than getting wine here from Argentina and France, especially with the tariffs going on right now with European wines. That certainly adds a whole added layer of cost that, our domestic wines aren't going to see. I would probably say actually like like Santa Barbara.
Oh yeah,
or even just some
fair.
basic like Sonoma Coast stuff you can find under $20 that are super solid.
Yeah, I definitely think Sonoma Coast and Santa Barbara would be the two.
Yeah, and they're juicy and they're enjoyable and I mean they've got.
I probably find myself like
I need some more Luca.
Yeah, when people come over. Yeah, like I almost always I think, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it, but yeah. Santa Barbara, Sonoma Coast.
I mean,
those are the things
right?
and those are also the wines like I kind of like drink those in like the and even with value Pinot Noir, like me, like if I'm just a consumer and I'm just Joe Blow going out there and buying wine, like I'm on vacation or something, I don't buy cheap Pinot Noir.
No,
it's the thing I splurge on.
I don't buy Pinot Noir all that often. Mm-hmm. Agreed, but when I do, I'm willing to pay for it.
Yeah, for sure. It's just one of those things that like you get what you pay for. The world is full of like value wine regions and value wine grapes.
Like all of Spain.
Like all of Spain, like all of Portugal. Yeah. You know what I mean? But like fuck it, spend the money on Pinot Noir. Yeah. It's just. I mean, like what's a good analogy? It's like.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah, man. Like you don't want a fake Burberry, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's just kind of where. And in all honesty, like, and this is me being like dead honest. Like these are the value Pinot Noir plays.
Yeah. At
like $30.
Yeah.
Like I don't really. I mean, and sometimes I can get really good. If I get really good $20 Pinot Noir, it's almost always from those two places we mentioned. It's almost always Sonoma Coast or Santa Barbara.
And they're good, but they are a little different in style.
Yeah.
They tend to be...
They're warmer regions and they're juicier and just more fruit driven.
Like a little more bubblegum and juicy fruit, like wet.
More intensity, less complexity.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Often more spice from like wood chips even, because they're trying to balance out some of that intensity of fruit. But they can be super good and enjoyable. And I often like those wines with just a scotch of chill on them.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too. It's like these are all wines that we can, the super fruit bomb guys, like in the like 60, 65 degrees is like perfect.
Yeah.
Fair point. Another fantastic presentation tonight. Don't forget to plug the next events. Katie even reminded me.
Yeah.
Okay, so on I've got February 6th, I'm doing a Tuscan tasting. It's called Variety and Value, and it's all Tuscan red wines. And then the 20th of February, I'm doing Syrah, Petit Syrah, Shiraz, and those are the next two. And then I don't know. I'm literally gonna talk to Katie about like March, and I'll probably have March like 2 or more wine events. We have a few things in the works. 2 or more things for March up by the end of next week. Yeah. Fair point. February 6th.
Anything you guys would love to see?
Yeah. Hey. Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah. Is there anything people want to like totally dig on?
Especially if you do these classes often. Like, what do you love?
I think you have that reversed. I do have it reversed. I'm sure. The Shiraz Petit Syrah is February 6th. The Tuscan class is February 20th. Yeah, I know. Oh, please invite Katie back. I will invite Katie
Thank
back.
you.
I promise. I really like this. This feels. I mean, like I said, this is the first time I've drank wine with another adult in a room that's not outdoors in 10 months. That's not my wife.
This is the first time I've left the house in 5 days.
Yeah. I've spent 50 hours at Ray's in the last 5 days.
I showered today and everything. It was a good day. Thank you guys.
Yeah. All right. Anybody ask anything else? How about a class on Spanish wine? I did one 2 weeks ago. But I do another one. And Spain's so cool. And there's so much Spanish stuff.
You can get Aaron to do it. Then you don't even have to.
You know what? Oh, I could get Aaron to do it. That's a great idea. I don't know if I could do this with an hour and a half for Aaron. And I kind of got to be here.
Well, she can do it.
I wish she'd hear me say that. I almost want to record me saying that and send it to her.
No, not that Aaron. Aaron Drain from Olay.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah. We want a Cabernet Franc class. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That would be really cool.
Yep.
Oh, wow. We should do a Cabernet
do
Franc
it.
class. I'm gonna write that down. People would love that. Great idea,
Super
Kelly.
great idea.
Oh, wow. Super great idea. And it's so just basic. We use the other Cabernet.
The parent.
The parent, yes. The parent. Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc make Cabernet Sauvignon. We will be there. Oh, yeah. Merlot. You know what? Merlot, of course.
Sure.
I'm an idiot. Of course I should do Merlot. Like, duh. That's like the lowest hanging fruit ever. And these are both really aging class.
I love Merlot.
Me too. You know what's really great? It's like, sorry, this is getting off topic, but like, just buy Napa Valley Merlot. It's so fucking cheap now.
So cheap.
And it's like so good.
Oh
It's like so unpopular that they have to like make these like outlandish blends with it. And most times you're getting like blended, like some kind of stupid blend thing or it has some dumb name and it's a blend from Napa. It's almost always like mostly Merlot at this point.
And if you want it to taste a little bit more like Cab, then buy Washington State Merlot.
Yep, for sure.
Which is even cheaper.
For sure, which is use the word crunchy again.
So amazing.
All right. Oh, God, these are really good ideas.
Yeah.
I've been lobbying for a Cab Franc class for 2 years. Well, all right, Kelly. Hey, man, just step up, dude. I mean, you want to do this part-time during the pandemic? Come on down, man. It's super fun.
We'll do it.
I'm not stressed out at all. I love tequila. Me too.
I love tequila.
Yeah, fuck it. Let's just do a tequila class.
Dude,
we could just improv a tequila class right now, and I could just go bring bottles in from the store. Oh, a Chenin Blanc class would be awesome. I promise I'll do a Chenin Blanc class,
that'd be fun.
Yeah, because Chenin, you can do like, Chenin is like the white, it's like the ultimate white wine chameleon.
For sure.
I
mean, you could do all still, or you could do sparkling still.
You could do sparkling still and
dessert.
Sweet dessert. I mean, yeah, it's unbelievable.
Do some Cortichon.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have some Cortichon at home,
Nice.
and I told my son,
It's
I
hard
was
to find.
2010 Beaumard Cortichon. I'm like, buddy, when you're old enough,
when you're 60,
yeah,
then you can drink this because that's about when it'll be ready.
you can have the. It's his birth year. I'm like, you can have this when you retire. Okay, now we're doing the wine jokes. All right. I will even do your PowerPoint while you're there, man. Maybe we need to do a collab. All right. I'm going to shut it off, guys, because this has gotten to be too fun. Hey, thanks, everybody. We'll do this with Katie again pretty soon because the vibe is it's getting her out of the house.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, bye. Blessings.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Oh, yeah. Remember.
Cheers. That if you buy the wine, don't don't put your pickup date until Wednesday or later,
Wednesday
please.
or later.
Yeah, okay. All right, bye. Your stream will stop immediately and you will no longer be live. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Yeah.